Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. Welcome back to a night in Requiem in London. In this particular scene, Mr. Goodman has asked Miss Brothers to meet if she'd be okay meeting him in a location within Carthian territory that wouldn't have too many prying eyes as they speak about some current events of recent, and also particularly certain what's the best way to put this, and to test certain hmm, and to trade certain information about what it possibly can share to make sure that neither of them get destroyed in these particular rough nights.
So they would probably pick the park, again in Carthian territory, and actually rather close to Chloe's haven, her butcher shop, Cutthroats. Um, that way, if Roadkill decides, run off, it's just like, okay, he went back to the butcher shop since there's a doggy door there. Um, and But she retrieves when they get there, he'll probably run out with like a ball and she'll just chuck it for him all over the place to keep him busy while they talk.
When he arrives there, he is still showing that. The best way to put it, that addict's tick, but he's doing his best to compose himself and says, I'm glad you're able to meet me, Miss Brothers.
Hello, Julian. She'll, throw the ball again and look over her shoulder at him.
She watches the ball being thrown as the dog begins to chase after it for fetch.
Mm-hmm.
And then he'll turn back to her. Sorry to catch you on such short notice, but I was hoping we could trade information.
No, you're fine. What do you want to talk about?
Hmm, Curious what the Carthian plans are, making sure that the Invictus doesn't absolutely destroy them.
Well, it's Verve in charge. So, guillotines, guerrilla warfare. She hasn't talked to me yet. Um, I'm in need to talk to her. I need to talk to Verve. There's a lot of things on my mind that I need to make clear to her.
He raises an eyebrow to that, and he will continue on. What happened to? Excuse me, as I am looking at the rogues gallery. What happened to Stanford?
He fell short. And also the fact that I was dragged onto the stage and I was the first one to practically cast my vote. You know how long I've been in town. You've heard the rumors.
I just don't remember hearing about this verb, and she's coming in a blaze of glory to lead the Carthian movement.
She's always been there. She leads the guillotines. It's practically a street gang.
Let's see.
And I used to be an independent until that night. And when I cast my vote, I signed my life away to those guillotines. To Verb's side. Not directly into the guillotines. Pretty sure there's a test I have to pass for that.
You don't sound happy.
I'm always up for the challenge. It's just. It's a little difficult to explain. I was very chipper and excited during that meeting with everybody. But in my head, I'm a little conflicted.
How so?
My grandsire was practically a warlord. She's back in the States. She was a sheriff in New Orleans, and it fell in her reign. But she was still very, I wouldn't say warmongering or bloodthirsty, but it was a mixture of the two. And she tried to keep her cool. And she went independent and went from there. So now, at the thought of war, my blood just gets excited. But at the same time, I don't want to be like my grandsire.
He kind of turns his head and, or kind of quirks his head, but he nods. Yeah, it's like violence can be intoxicating,
Oh,
especially,
absolutely.
and especially for our kind. Oh, I notice. I smell the beast on you like a gangrel, but something's different.
Chuckles, grabs the ball, chucks it again. Maybe when you're older, I'll tell you.
He has a small smile on his face. Oh, I was like, I'm reduced to a child again, am I?
I am about, what is it, 35 years older than you in this life?
Then I guess you are my elder then.
Yes, I am. I'm still just a fledgling like you, but I have years on you. So I wouldn't, I mean, I'm sorry to say, maybe when you're older, but how about we leave it to this? If we live through this, I'll tell you my secret.
Fine. We all have our secrets.
Everybody has secrets.
As far as the Ordo is concerned, we may be doing some, let's just say, cleaning up in our organization.
Well, it's the same thing that I told you when I met you at that one gentleman's club when I got back in town. We may be on different sides of the chessboard, but gangrels are always still one pack. So if you need help, my door is open to you.
I appreciate that. I'll be honest, I don't, outside of you and Hunter, I don't feel. Sorry, there's a bug on my television. Outside of you and Hunter, the other gangrel that I've talked to, outside of the ones in position of power, excuse me, has been, let's just say, lacking for me, though they don't much care when I say that.
Maybe I had a different welcome into this life than you. But at the same time, during my days of actual life, I learned the valuable lesson of treat someone as an ally until they stab you in the back. So everyone can be a best friend to me until you stab me in the back. We can all use allies during these nights.
He nods to that. Said, I'm not like the Lenkea, at least in the sense
Thank
that I don't try to draw lines as saying this is this and this is that. I simply try to let's just say, go with the flow.
And thank goodness for that. As she's contemplating of how like her most recent and only experiences with Baneforth have gone, and then finally meeting his childer in a not in his present scene was kind of a relief.
Hmm.
I don't know how I feel about the Lankea. I'm getting two different, like, polar opposite sides from them.
So, I don't know. I met several different Linkea. Most outside of a few have been irritating. They are very sure of themselves, and I find it odd, as they call us freaks and Frankensteins and just an arrogant fool that likes cutting off people's head, that we're a lot quieter than they are, even though I feel that their god might want a bigger sense of humility.
So then, how do you feel about Charlie's situation?
I don't know. I don't know what it is. I noticed that Baneforth wasn't around last time I talked to her, which I thought that was odd. He
I
seems to be
mean,
very close to her.
I mean, with the birds.
Oh, that. Uh, if
But she
Constance,
says the birds very hushedly. Hushed. Yeah.
if Constantine says she's clean, then she's clean. Though the people that might be cursed by them inside of the sheriff's groups, that's a problem because we don't know who's, quote unquote, driving the car now.
Hmm. I'm going to speak with Marcus to see if I can go with him to meet Constantine.
Hmm.
I would like to get a weapon, especially considering I'm definitely on the other side of the chessboard with this war. I have old tools in my arsenal. I need to update it.
You nod to that. Well, maybe I'll keep up my luck and never run into them. Which I'm honestly a bit surprised about. There has been stuff happening to me these past nights. One of them is not them, which I don't know if I should take that as a blessing or not.
Which one's that?
Never met the birds yet. I only hear about them.
Same.
Oh, oh.
I deal with bigger fish.
I don't know. It's. I am concerned. Not concerned. I am concerned. Concerned that I won't have the tools outside of my wits and my words to best deal with them. Don't have any magical weapons, nor do I even have the capability of using one, even if I did.
I made the same offer to Marcus. With everything going on with the Ordo in regards to the Invictus, I will sponsor you to get into the Carthians. And I will be able to help you gain that status that if you wish to still work with your Ordo allies, you can without being hindered by the Carthians. We're not all bloodthirsty here. Just a majority of us devote verve into the war party leader.
I don't have a problem with the movement. In certain ways, I can respect it. Justice and peace and honor for all. But My loyalty will always be to the Ordo. They just, not only am I honor bound to them since my birth, nearly, I, despite the cruel experiments, the weird science, the abominations that we make, we don't typically make them out of malice. Not beyond us, for sure. Definitely not beyond us. Unfortunately, we are like many scientists, but we don't have the luxury of feeling morally conflicted. We just simply pass another line. Can't get progress with restraint. Just pass. Or at least it's slower if you do it that way.
Yes. And that's what Marcus said too. But my offer still remains open. My door is open to you, along with the Carthian sponsorship. You call on me, I will help you. Especially you, because we are of the same pack.
He nods to that. I'll keep that in mind. But I can say this, despite Bainfort's claim. If the Ordo truly knew that if we were experimenting on vagabonds and the destitute in such a manner that he describes it is, there would have been a conflict of interest for sure.
For sure. That's
Yes.
why I don't trust him.
Hmm. He
I,
nods to that.
I don't trust Bainforth at all. He walked in on me and Marcus having a meeting and announced that he didn't trust the Ordo and that he was going to go after the Ordo and offered sanctuary to Marcus. Did he offer the same sanctuary to you?
Oh, I'm not a believer. Marcus the least pays lip service. And me and Bainforth have been in conflict since we knew each other existed within the city.
Then again, definitely. You have my fists. As she like balls up her fist, like, if you need them, I'll go up against this bully. As I did tell the Carthians when I casted my vote and somebody tried to sway me, all I do is hit people for a living now.
Well, despite the people that don't like getting hit, somebody has to do it.
Somebody has to do it. That's why Verve and them trust my opinion. I've been around the block a few times. I've been in the city since the end of the last war. So, besides them, I don't know anybody else who's been here that long. Or else I haven't met them yet. Except for this new Alexander guy, but still, I don't know him at all.
Never heard of him either. Outside of him saying that he's Constantine's child, or I'm just, I said, I'm honestly surprised that he ever had any spawn. But he didn't seem like the type that would want that kind of baggage behind him. Assume he would just keep ghouls at best if he needed assistance.
I'll have to take your word on that and I'll confirm it with him when and if I ever meet him.
This is purely conjecture at this point. I'm curious. The other gangrels don't bring up the pack. They don't praise, but you do.
She looks at Roadkill. And he's like waiting for her to throw the ball. Maybe it's just the dog in me.
Hmm.
What do you align with? I don't ask very many. I don't ask people what they align with very much.
I was taught by my sire that no matter what you do, no, no matter where you are, never be weak. Always be the apex predator if you can. If not, give them a reason not to attack. Give them a reason not to see you as weak. She, in a way, some may say she demands perfection. I say she demands due diligence.
She kind of leans in. Is it a bear?
Um, he isn't a bear.
I figured I'd ask.
She's, if anything, I would describe her. She's more like a hawk.
Hmm. I used to know a gangrel back in the States who took after a raven, wings and all. It's the craziest thing I'd ever seen. And I was new to that city that I was in, and I watched her carry a guy out of a roof of a building to interrogate him. It was the greatest thing I'd ever seen.
Kind of, again, quirks his head to that. I've seen some interesting things with Protean. Seen somebody that can even turn into a swarm of animals. A bird, actually, if I remember. If I remember it correctly, swarm of crows, or murder, if you're going to be technical.
Murder. Either way, she lifts her hands and what is it? I think you have to spend a point in blood to extend your claws, I think.
Uh, oh, let's see. I got the book. Oh, no, I don't, but I can get it open.
Hold on. I have it in my character sheet on my Google Docs. I'll just open that up really quick. I was smart this go around and I attached my merits with everything included on it. Now let's see how many pages I have to go through. Writing away. Yep, costs one vitae, so she'll spend a point of blood. You kind of flex her hand and just show her claws from her fingers.
He nods to that. And he states, and speaking of that, Damien didn't seem the sort to want to do it. And everything, Alley Cat and Victor kind of shun those particular ways. But I feel you can respect the traditional greeting between two gangrels.
Mm, it's been a long time since the old days. Old days, you had to have to fight.
So people take it too seriously. They think just because we fight, we mean we're trying to establish some type of pecking order, which to a point it does.
It does.
But uh, I like to see it more as a sign of good faith.
Mm. I remember when I was an independent. Uh, my friend, the bird lady, had a club with the Carthians, and I was invited by another kindred to go with because I wanted to go fight. I needed to burn some energy. And I had no idea that to actually be able to even stand in the room and watch fights, I had to jump in the ring myself.
Too many people benefit from violence but never tasted it. It's
It
cowardly
was
in a lot of cases.
it was glorious. I gave Ancilla the whopping of a lifetime.
Wasn't ready for you.
He wasn't. He had been, almost the apex predator, be right behind her until I walked in. And I don't know, I just don't think he was ready for the Bostonian in me.
He looks confused at that particular term.
Bostonians, they mostly come from Irish. She kind of like lowers her stance into like this crouching and, moves her fist forward like a drunken Irishman fighting in a bar. It's a state thing, I'm sorry. I forget that sometimes how long I've actually been in London, that some people just don't understand the vernacular.
It's not a problem. No, I won't lie, I don't know much about, I guess, where I came from before I was like this. Been homeless most of my life. So, never knew my parents, so never heard any stories about, the great line of whatever I was.
I lost my mom at a young age. Dad went to prison for it.
Unfortunate.
So I know the boat. Being through the foster care system, only in Boston, I grew up with it. Got out as soon as I could, made my living. I learned to grow up at a very young age.
Likewise. He begins to really begins to straighten up and um not like he's trying to display anything. He begins taking off his shirt, and under it you will see a Kevlar vest as he begins unhooking it and placing it next to himself as he puts back on his shirt.
Are we, do you finally feel safe?
Hmm. I feel it'd be unfair.
Mm. You'll probably notice, I'll give you it, that she's watching like the dark edges of the park. Like you guys are staying in the more lit where like the spotlights are. Not the spotlights, like the lampposts. That's what
Hmm.
the word. Jesus. The lampposts are. And she's kind of watching like those dark corners, throwing the ball. She's also making sure that the ball stays within the lit area.
Trust me, unless somebody's using obfuscate, I would have heard them or smelt them by now.
It's no kindred that I'm afraid of.
I doubt they would come up to a meeting like this.
Again, it's not a kindred that I'm afraid of, and she scratches the side of her head, and that's where the tribal wolf tattoo is. And you can still see like She's not wearing her leather jacket. She's got scars running all down her arms, and they look like talons. Um, it's just every now and then when she gets a little nervous, like she scratches that side of her head, like it's almost like a tick herself.
And kind of noticing that, he thinks about it for a moment.
Let me look at the character sheet really quick because I wonder if that'd be a role to like know how often she's in town, because again, she's been out of town for a while, about 9 months. I wonder what that would be. Would that be a wit socialize to like remember?
Mm, I don't know. Is she trying to remember, or is she trying? Is she getting caught up in a memory about the scar, or is she trying to display something about the scar? I guess.
It's kind of the same. It's for like it's for him to notice anything.
Then I
Cuz
would.
like
Hmm?
it's cuz like when if you remember back to the meeting with the group and everything, when Marcus went to go get a room and was just like, "Let's go now." She actually ran to Marcus and was like whispering in her ear, and she was like scratching at her head on the side that was the wolf's.
Then I would say, if she's trying to be more subtle about it, like empathy or subterfuge, but
I
it.
would say that. So that would be if it's that one. I'm trying to remember like what the role is in combat of that one. Is like if she's trying to hide something, he would roll to like try and see it.
Yeah, but if she's trying to convey something, it would be. Um,
It's a subtle convey. Because I mean, common knowledge is that she's gone pretty much 3 months out of the year every year. So you'd know that for about 5 years, or probably 3 to 4 years, considering your age. And noticing the pattern is that she actually doesn't show up to family meetings at all, or doesn't go to Elysiums at all for about 3 months.
okay. Excuse me.
So I'm just trying to remember. It's with something. Hold on. No, it's composure empathy. That's what it is. To sense it, it's composure. It's either presence empathy or composure empathy.
No, it's it either works. So whatever you feel more comfortable with.
Whatever's highest for you, go for it. Why not? We're having fun. It's a social scene.
Alrighty then. All right. Roll my composure.
It's subtle enough, but you catch onto it, and you're starting to remember that that is her habit. Is that it's what is it? It's springtime. She's always gone. It's usually like March, April, May. She's gone around that time. around that time frame she's gone, and then she comes back. But you notice this last go around, she was actually gone for longer. About 9 months she was gone. And since then, she's been a little nervous and she's been scratching at that side of her head for a little bit too much. Probably with everything going on.
He kind of looks at her a bit obliquely, then saying, "If you don't mind me asking, how'd you get this?"
She kind of like freezes. Shit. Like shakes her hand and then looks at her arms as they're like around all of her arms. And she seems to come home with a few new scars every year. I owe you some honesty.
You
Some.
don't owe me anything.
When you're asking my honest opinion about the war, and you're asking me my honest opinion, I go out of town every year. About I try to keep it to about 3 months out of the year. That way I don't miss a lot. I missed a lot this year. Um, there used to be a pack of wolves in town. I keep them out of town.
So they do exist.
Oh, honey, there's no denying it. We're vampires.
Marcus brought it up way back when that he might have ran into one or heard one of them while he's on a mission. And I assume they existed, but I've never talked about one or seen one. I just assumed that maybe there were just an odd entity or two, not necessarily a race or a group of cursed beings. I really have no idea how they work.
No, they're real. They're real and they make sure you remember when you run into them.
That violent?
As she just mentioned, she kind of holds out her arms as you can see them like under and over her arms, her hands, her shoulders. Yeah, 20 years. More than 20 years. This pack moved over from the States, and I've been tracking them.
Well, definitely explains whatever these werewolves are. They are not fucking around
No,
because
no, they're not.
whatever they're doing, they're not supposed to leave scars. Most things don't even phase us like that.
Oh, they do. If they cause enough damage, they do. They're not supposed to leave scars, which leads to believe how much damage are they gonna cause before they leave scars. But that's besides the point. I'm home. They're farther away now. They're not gonna bug us for a very long time. I can probably even take a break next year and maybe do a fall trip, which allows me to be able to focus on the job at hand.
He nods at that. I have heard just, an old tale or another gangrel, that they're like us in certain ways.
Like us, as you mean in gangrels,
He nods.
in a way. As she looks down at her claws that are still out. Maybe I'm not like a dog. Maybe I'm more like a wolf.
Maybe it's more than simply animal metaphors.
Maybe.
Um,
She smiles like sincerely at the idea.
what did your sire teach you about the history of our people?
She's thinking. She's honestly thinking, trying to remember. It's a little difficult to say because I didn't stick around my sire all that much. Nowadays, sires actually care for their childer. Back then, they were obsessive. And someone, and she points to herself like me, who didn't appreciate being held down even by someone who had brought her back from the brink of death, tried not to stick around all that much. So, when my year came up after training, I got away and I never came back. He's still in Boston. Or he's hunting me. One of the two. I'm not concerned either way.
I say, Fessel and I had a different kind of relationship. At least, maybe different compared to most other gangrels. Her teachings were academic, but I would say no less harsh than any typical, let's just say, training. She would still use the terms, okay, you survived the winter without me, and so forth. But she also wanted to prove that I was intelligent enough to learn to adapt in a city environment. Been on the streets all my life, so it wasn't too hard. But when it came to actual education, she was much more fierce about that. I was to be I was to be a shining resource for her. So she drilled it into me. Books upon books and knowledge upon knowledge. But when it came to our people, she had a short list of things to remember. Said,
No.
so she told me that a gangrel this never fails. They simply adjust. So a gangrel never cowers. They endure, and a gangrel is never weak. And she gave me some books and told me some names. If you want more, figure that out for yourself.
Chloe is actually smiling. As she's like nodding, listening to the words, she goes, sounds like you were taught the old ways. Not many were. So it's good to know that some still stick around. And for those that follow, you got living proof right here. Granted, they are much older, and trust me, they're the ones that made that rule.
Yeah. I'm supposed to be looking up on at least. Because there's so many goddamn tales. These are the only ones that make sense to me. That where we might have came from, and maybe explains a bit of our relationship with the other clans and just our general nature. You know the story of Gilgamesh?
Briefly.
Oh, he had a brother named Enkidu.
Mmm, yes. Marcus briefly told me about that.
From some old books and a few gangrel that my sire knows. They say we came from there, from ancient Babylon. We were the brother to be equal to Gilgamesh, his other half, a wild man in the forest. And as the story continues on until his unfortunate demise, there's a lot of parallels to not only our way of doing things, but the ways of other clans. Gilgamesh is described to be a Ventrue. From what I know of the tale, it makes sense. The arrogance, the self assurance, and the notion that despite all of that personal power and pride that they have, they're still very, very fragile and lonely. Then the tempting serpent of Lamash, the divine prostitute, and it just screams Deva.
Yes.
And if I remember right, Umbabu might be one of the first Nosferatu,
Yeah. I can believe that.
which I find interesting because Umbabu was a holy and divine spirit that was unfortunately cut down, at least through my perspective. So I feel that give the Nosferatu more credence than they actually get.
I've known some good Nosferatus in my days. I've known a lot of great people in my old days, even if it's just 40 years.
He nods solemnly to that. I just find this whole particular mess let's we'll put it simply, an inconvenience. Understandable, but inconvenient nonetheless. But I plan to rise to the occasion.
Just know, I have the worst luck. Every city that I've gone to has fallen, whether whether or not it was by my hand or not. For the most part, not by my hand, to be honest. But coming here, as she's looking around the park and towards the lights of the city, it hasn't fallen yet. So I see that maybe my luck has turned. And with this war, I see it as my luck trying to come back into my life. And I'm about to kick back down that door and beat the ever loving shit out of it to protect it. I've made a new life in this city, and I'm going to protect it with everything that I have.
He nods to that.
I've also worked too damn hard. As she nods up to her butcher shop. It may be small, and it's not a gentleman club as I'm used to running back in my younger years, but I'm proud of that little butcher shop, and it's still been standing all these years. Yes, I used to run strip joints. They were amazing. They gave
I'm
me a
not.
purpose in life.
I'm not a man to judge you on such things. Excuse me.
Excuse you.
I appreciate you taking this time to talk to me, Miss Brothers.
You're welcome, Julian. And you can just call me Chloe if you need to.
Yes, ma'am.
Miss Brothers just makes me feel like an old woman. And I haven't earned that title yet.
No. Do you have any questions for me?
You said you're all words, but if need be, are you willing to throw your fists up?
It's what I'm good at.
Then that's good to hear. We may actually need your words in these nights. And if you need some hands to back you up, you have it from me.
Yeah, never thought I've ever been considered for my words before.
I've heard you talk a few times. So, you have my hands. And she looks down at her rough, calloused, blistered, sometimes bloodied, some other times hands.
He nods to that. Well, then I bid you good night, Chloe.
You have a great night, Julian.
I said, thank you.
You're welcome.
And he will begin to leave.
And she will continue throwing the ball.
And with that, thank you, players, for playing. Thank you, watchers, for watching. Have a good morning, evening, or night.
Good night.